The first thing Damien Cross gave me was not a ring. It was a warning. "Sign it, Claire," he said, sliding the marriage contract across the polished desk. "Or the people your father betrayed will come for you before sunrise." The rain had turned downtown Manhattan into a blur of black glass and yellow taxi lights. It struck the windows of the law office like thrown gravel, sharp and restless, while the clock above the bookcase blinked 2:13 a.m. in cold blue numbers. I had been awake for almost 20 hours. My black flats were soaked through. My hands smelled faintly of cheap coffee and printer ink. 2 hours earlier, I had been at my apartment in Queens, folding laundry, pretending grief was something I could organize into piles. Then the phone rang. A lawyer I had never met told me my father's final file had been opened, and my name was inside it. My father had been dead for 11 days. Everyone said it was a heart attack. Quiet, sudden, convenient. But nothing about the man sitting across from me felt convenient. Damien Cross wore a black suit that looked like it had never known a wrinkle. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark blonde hair brushed back from a face too controlled to be called handsome in any ordinary way. Handsome men wanted to be noticed. Damien looked like he had spent his whole life making people regret noticing him too late. His eyes were gray, not soft gray, storm gray, steel underwater. Behind him stood two men in dark coats, silent as furniture, their faces turned toward the door like they expected trouble to walk in at any second. The lawyer, Mr. Harlan, kept wiping his glasses with a cloth even though they were already clean. "Miss Whitman," he said, voice trembling around the edges, "your father entered into a private protection agreement with Mr. Cross's family several years ago." "My father was an accountant," I whispered. My throat felt raw. "He did taxes for restaurants and construction companies. He didn't make agreements with men like him." Damien's gaze did not move. "Men like me are usually the reason men like your father stay alive as long as they do." The words landed quietly. That made them worse. I looked down at the contract. My full name was printed in the center of the page. Claire Elise Whitman. Beside it, his Damien Alexander Cross. There were legal terms I could barely understand, phrases about public alliance, temporary marital status, asset shielding, next of kin access, and personal security. But one sentence was clear enough to make my stomach drop. Effective immediately upon signature, Claire Elise Whitman will be legally recognized as the spouse of Damien Alexander Cross. I pushed the papers back so fast they slid crooked across the desk. "No," Mr. Harlan flinched. "Damien did not. You haven't heard the rest." "I heard enough." I stood, though my knees shook badly enough that I had to grip the chair. "Whatever my father owed you, it has nothing to do with me." For the first time, something shifted in Damien's expression. Not anger, not surprise, almost pity. That frightened me more than anger would have. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and placed a small photograph on top of the contract. My apartment building, taken from across the street. My kitchen window glowing yellow on the 4th floor. My car parked beneath a broken streetlight. Then another photo. Me leaving work 3 nights ago, wrapped in my thrift store beige coat, head down against the wind. Then another. My younger brother's college dorm in Boston. My chest went cold. "Stop," I said, but my voice barely came out. Damien leaned forward, elbows on the desk, his hands clasped neatly like we were discussing a business loan instead of my life. "Your father kept records for dangerous people. Then he tried to disappear with information that did not belong to him. Some of those people believe you have it now. I don't. They won't ask politely." The rain filled the silence. Somewhere outside, a siren wailed and faded into the city. I looked at the photos again, at my brother's dorm, at the window where he probably slept through all of this, safe only because he did not know he was in danger. "Why marriage?" I asked. Damien's jaw tightened. 1 inch. Barely anything. But I saw it. "Because my name closes doors that money cannot. As my wife, you become untouchable in public. Protected in private. Watched at all times. A prisoner, then. Alive," he said. "There's a difference." I hated him for being calm. I hated my father for leaving me with a ghost made of secrets. I hated the pen sitting beside the contract, silver and expensive, waiting for my hand like it already knew I would break. "How long?" I asked. Mr. Harlan looked at Damien. Damien looked only at me. "Until I find what your father hid. And after that, we dissolve the marriage." Quietly. I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. So I'm supposed to marry a stranger at 2 in the morning because you say someone is coming for me. Damien stood. The room seemed smaller when he did. He walked to the window and looked down at the street 70 stories below. His reflection appeared in the glass beside mine. Dark suit beside damp coat. Power beside exhaustion. No, Claire, he said softly. You marry me because the black sedan parked outside your building tonight was not mine. My breath stopped. He turned back to me, and for one unbearable second, I saw what lived behind the coldness. Urgency. Not kindness. Not yet. But something close to fear, buried so deep he probably hated that I had seen it. I can protect you from them, he said. But only if the city believes you belong to me. I looked at the ring box then. Small. Black velvet. Opened beside the contract like a trap dressed as a promise. Inside was a diamond that caught the office light and broke it into pieces. My whole life had become pieces. My father's death. My brother's safety. My name beside Damien's. I picked up the pen. My fingers trembled so hard the tip scratched the page before I formed the first letter. Damien watched in silence as I signed away the life I had known. When I finished, he took the contract, checked my signature, then closed the ring box without touching me. This marriage is only on paper, he said. Do not mistake it for love. I should have felt relieved. Instead, as thunder rolled over Manhattan and Damien Cross gave an order for his men to bring the car around, I realized something terrifying. Paper burns. Names don't. The car waiting downstairs was not a car. It was a black, armored SUV with tinted windows, a silent driver, and 2 men standing beside it, as if the sidewalk belonged to Damien Cross by birthright. Rain soaked the shoulders of my beige coat the second we stepped out of the law office, but no one around Damien seemed to notice the weather. People noticed him instead. A doorman stopped mid-sentence. A taxi driver lowered his eyes. Even the city, loud and restless at 2:30 in the morning, seemed to make room when Damien walked through it. He did not touch me as we crossed the sidewalk. He did not guide me by the elbow or place a hand at my back. Somehow that made the invisible line between us feel sharper. I was his wife now, according to a signature drying inside a folder, but he moved beside me like a stranger escorting evidence. The driver opened the rear door. Warm leather, dim lights, the faint scent of cedar and rain. I climbed in first, clutching my purse against my ribs. Damien followed, sitting a careful foot away from me. Not close, not far. Exact. Controlled. The door shut, and the world outside became a blurred painting of wet streets and red brake lights. For several blocks, no one spoke. Manhattan slid past the window in dark towers and sleeping storefronts. My phone buzzed in my lap. A message from my brother, Noah. You awake? Weird question, but did Dad ever mention a man named Cross? My thumb froze above the screen. Damien's eyes shifted toward me. He had not moved his head, just his eyes. Do not answer that yet, he said. He is my brother, which is why you will not pull him into this until I know who is watching him. My pulse climbed. You had people photograph his dorm. I had people confirm he was safe. That sounds better when you say it in that voice. For the first time, the corner of Damien's mouth moved. Not a smile. Something colder. What voice? The one that makes kidnapping sound like customer service. The driver's shoulders tensed. One of the men in the front passenger seat glanced back. Damien did not. He looked at me as if he was deciding whether I was foolish or brave, and I hated that a part of me wanted to know his answer. You are not being kidnapped, Claire. No, I am just being legally relocated by a man I married 15 minutes ago. For your protection, I had a lock on my apartment door. They had your address, your schedule, and your brother's campus. His voice stayed quiet, but the words pressed the air out of my lungs. I looked back at the message from Noah. The screen dimmed, then went black. Outside, the SUV turned off Fifth Avenue and headed toward a quieter street lined with limestone buildings and private entrances. I knew the neighborhood only from movies and from the kind of listings people opened just to feel poor in high definition. The Cross residence took up the corner of an entire block. It was not flashy. That made it worse. Gray stone, tall iron gates. Security cameras small enough to hide, but present enough to be felt. The SUV stopped beneath a covered entrance, and before I could reach for the handle, a guard opened the door from outside. I stepped onto smooth pavement, staring up at the house that looked less like a home and more like a verdict. Inside, the silence was enormous. Marble floors held the light from crystal fixtures high above. A curved staircase rose at the center of the foyer. Fresh white roses sat in a black vase on a table so polished I could see my pale, rain-streaked reflection in it. I looked like a ghost who had wandered into someone else's inheritance. A woman in her late 50s appeared from a side hallway, silver hair pinned neatly, black dress simple and severe. "Mrs. Cross," she said. I flinched before I could stop myself. Damien noticed. Of course he did. "This is Margaret," he said. "She manages the house. Anything you need, ask her. What I need is to go home." Margaret's expression did not change, but something in her eyes softened. Damien removed his gloves slowly, one finger at a time. "Your apartment is being watched tonight. By your men. By men I do not control." The room seemed to tilt. I reached for the edge of the foyer table. Damien's hand moved like instinct, stopping an inch from my elbow before he pulled it back. He had almost touched me. Almost. And somehow the restraint unsettled me more than contact would have. "Your room is upstairs," he said. "Second door on the left. Margaret will bring anything you need from your apartment tomorrow. I need my life." That landed. I saw it. A small tightening near his eyes, gone almost instantly. "So did I," he said, so quietly I almost missed it. Then the cold returned. "This arrangement has rules. You do not leave without security. You do not speak to reporters. You do not contact anyone about your father's files without telling me first." I let out a breath that shook. "And what do you get to do? Keep you alive." That is not an answer. It is the only one that matters tonight. I climbed the stairs because standing there any longer felt like losing. My room was larger than my entire apartment. Cream walls, heavy curtains, a bed wide enough for 3 people to sleep without touching. On the dresser sat a folded nightgown I did not ask for, a glass of water, and a small velvet tray for the ring I still refused to look at. I closed the door and leaned against it, listening. Voices rose softly from below. Damien's voice first. Low, controlled. Then another man's. "Should we post 2 at her door?" "No," Damien said. "She is not a prisoner." A pause. Then his voice dropped into something darker, something that made my breath catch through the wood. "But no one touches my wife." I stood frozen, hand pressed to my chest, because he had said it like a rule for the world, not a lie for the contract. And for the first time that night, I was not sure which version of Damien Cross scared me more. The man who claimed this marriage meant nothing, or the man downstairs ordering the city to believe it did. Morning came without mercy. Pale light pressed through the heavy curtains of my borrowed bedroom, turning the cream walls gold and making the whole place look almost gentle, which felt like an insult. Nothing about Damien Cross's house was gentle. Even the silence had rules. I woke in the same clothes I had worn to the law office, curled on top of the blanket with my purse still trapped under one arm, like someone might steal the last proof that I had existed before him. For 3 seconds, I forgot where I was. Then I saw the ring on my finger. The diamond caught the sunlight and threw it across the ceiling in sharp little flashes, beautiful and cold. I twisted it once. It fit perfectly. That bothered me more than if it had not. Someone had measured my life before I knew it was being taken. A soft knock came at the door. Not the hard knock of authority. A careful one. "Miss Claire." Margaret's voice. "Breakfast is ready when you are." I almost laughed. As if I were a guest. As if I had chosen marble floors and armed quiet over my apartment with the radiator that hissed all night and the neighbor upstairs who vacuumed at 6 in the morning. "I will be down in 10 minutes. I called back, because I had been raised to be polite even while falling apart. The bathroom looked like a hotel advertisement. White stone, silver fixtures, towels folded so precisely they seemed judgmental. I splashed cold water on my face until my skin stung, then stared at my reflection. Brown hair tangled from sleep. Blue eyes swollen from not crying enough. Pale skin, tired mouth, cheap sweater wrinkled beneath a borrowed roof. Mrs. Cross. The name felt like a coat made for someone taller, colder, better at lying. Downstairs, breakfast waited in a sunlit room overlooking a private courtyard. Fresh fruit, toast, eggs, coffee in a porcelain cup, so thin I was afraid to touch it. Damien stood by the window, already dressed in a charcoal suit, reading something on his phone. He looked like he had not slept and did not consider that a weakness. "Good morning," he said without looking up. "Is it?" That made his eyes lift. Margaret quietly left the room, closing the door behind her with the delicacy of someone escaping weather. Damien placed his phone face down on the table. We need to discuss rules. Funny. I was about to discuss exits. You are free to walk through any door in this house. With men following me. With security protecting you. That is a nicer word for the same cage. He pulled out the chair across from him, not for himself. For me. I did not sit. His hand remained on the chair back for one extra second before he let it go. Another almost. Another restraint. Rule 1, he said, voice even. You do not leave the residence without assigned security. No, Claire. No. I repeated, stronger this time. You do not get to start every sentence with my name like it gives you ownership of the rest of it. His jaw tightened. I noticed that about him. Damien did not show anger the way normal men did. No raised voice. No dramatic movement. His control narrowed instead, like a door closing inch by inch. Rule 2, he continued. You do not contact Noah until my team clears his phone and dorm network. The sound of my brother's name in his mouth made my stomach twist. You leave Noah out of this. I'm trying to keep him out of this. You keep saying that like I should trust you. You do not need to trust me. You need to listen. There it is. I leaned both hands on the table, my untouched coffee trembling in its cup. The great Damien Cross, buying a wife at 2 in the morning and calling it protection by breakfast. His eyes sharpened. I did not buy you. No. You just wrapped a contract around my throat and called it a lifeline. For a moment, the only sound was the soft tick of a clock somewhere down the hall. Then Damien moved around the table. Slowly. Not toward me like a threat, but like a man approaching a frightened animal he refused to admit he cared about scaring. He stopped several feet away. Enough distance that I could breathe. Your father left you in the middle of a war he helped create, he said. I pulled you behind the only wall strong enough to hold. And what happens when I decide I do not want your wall? His gaze dropped to the ring on my hand. Then you will learn the difference between freedom and exposure. I hated that I understood what he meant. I hated that fear could sound like logic when spoken in his voice. I picked up the ring with my thumb and twisted it hard enough to leave a red mark. You said this marriage was only on paper. It is. Then here is my rule. I stepped closer, close enough now to see the faint shadow under his eyes, the silver line of an old scar near his left temple, the tiny crack in the perfect marble. You do not get my heart. You do not get my loyalty. You do not get to decide what I feel just because a judge would recognize your last name beside mine. Damien looked at me for so long I heard my own pulse in my ears. Then he said, very softly, your heart is the only thing in this house I have not decided to take. The words should have sounded arrogant. They did. But underneath them was something else, something tired and almost human, something that made my anger stumble when I needed it steady. His phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it, and whatever softness had almost appeared vanished. Get dressed, he said. We have to go. Where? Your apartment. My breath caught. Why? He turned the phone so I could see the screen. A security photo filled it, grainy and gray. My apartment door stood open, lights spilling into the hallway. Someone had been inside. Someone had gone through the life I thought I could return to. Damien's voice dropped to a quiet, dangerous calm. Because whatever your father hid, someone believes it is there. And now they know you are not. By the time we reached Queens, the rain had stopped, but the street outside my apartment still shone like black glass under the morning light. My building looked smaller from the back seat of Damien's SUV. Older, more fragile. The brick walls I used to think were solid now seemed thin enough for secrets to breathe through. 2 of Damien's men entered first. I hated that I let them. I hated that I waited beside Damien on the sidewalk with my arms wrapped around myself, while Mrs. Alvarez from the second floor peeked through her curtains and pretended not to. People are going to talk, I muttered. Damien looked up at my building, expression unreadable. Let them. That is easy to say when gossip is afraid of you. His eyes shifted to me. Gossip is not what I am worried about. The front door buzzed open, and we climbed the stairs to the 4th floor. Every step creaked the way it always had, but now the sound felt different. Like the building was warning me. My apartment door stood open with the chain broken, the cheap brass lock bent out of place. No splintered wood. No dramatic destruction. Just a quiet violation. Somehow that was worse. I stepped inside before Damien could stop me. The smell hit me first. Cold air. Wet wool. Paper dust. My living room had been searched with careful hands. Couch cushions lifted, books pulled from shelves and stacked in wrong places. Kitchen drawers half open. Nothing shattered. Nothing wild. Whoever had come here had not been angry. They had been patient. I walked to the little table by the window where my father used to sit when he visited, drinking black coffee and pretending not to judge my neighborhood. The framed photo of him and Noah at Coney Island had been turned face down. I picked it up with fingers that did not feel like mine. They touched everything. I whispered. Damien stood near the doorway, not crowding me. One of his men spoke quietly into a phone in the hall. Another checked the windows. Damien's gaze moved over the room once, taking in details I would have missed. What would your father hide here? Nothing. My answer came too fast. He noticed. I turned on him. Do not look at me like that. I barely knew half of who he was either. Damien's face did not soften, but his voice lowered. Then think about the half you did know. I wanted to tell him to leave. I wanted to scream until every neighbor opened their door and confirmed I was still a real person, not a signature locked inside his world. Instead, I walked to my bedroom. My closet was open, clothes pushed aside, shoeboxes moved. The mattress had been lifted and dropped crooked on the frame. On my nightstand, the small ceramic dish where I kept loose change and bobby pins sat empty except for one thing. My mother's old key. I stared at it. That was not there. Damien came to the doorway, but did not enter until I looked back at him. Another rule of his, maybe, or another restraint. What does it open? I do not know. The key was small, dull brass, with a strip of faded blue tape wrapped around the head. My mother had died when I was 9. My father kept a box of her things in storage, then told me it was lost after we moved. I had not seen this key since I was a child, when she wore it on a chain beneath her sweater. I picked it up, and a memory rose so sharply it stole my breath. My mother at the kitchen table, whispering to my father, her hand closed around that key. His voice tight, her face pale, then silenced the moment they saw me standing in the hallway with my stuffed rabbit dragging on the floor. Claire, Damien's voice pulled me back. I closed my fist around the key. My mother had this. His eyes changed, just slightly. Your mother was connected to this. My mother baked cookies for school fundraisers and cried during old movies. She was not connected to anything like this. People hide the heaviest things inside ordinary lives. I looked at him then, really looked, and wondered what he had hidden inside his own. Before I could answer, my phone rang from inside my purse. The sound made everyone freeze. Noah's name lit the screen. My heart slammed against my ribs. I answered before Damien could stop me. Noah. There was wind on the line, then my brother's voice, low and scared in a way I had never heard before. Claire, some guy came to my dorm asking about Dad. He said he was an old friend, but he knew my schedule. Damien was suddenly in front of me, hand out, but not grabbing the phone. Asking without asking. I put it on speaker. Where are you? I asked. Outside the library. Campus security is nearby. Claire, what is going on? I looked at Damien. His gray eyes were already cold, already calculating, but beneath that, I saw the same urgency from the law office. He took the phone carefully, his voice calm enough to steady the room. Noah, this is Damien Cross. Walk into the library. Go to the front desk. Tell them you are waiting for campus police. Do not leave with anyone. Noah went silent. Are you the man Dad warned me about? The words cut through me. Damien did not blink. Probably, he said. But right now, I am the one keeping your sister alive. My knees weakened. Damien ended the call only after one of his men confirmed campus security had Noah inside. Then he looked at the key in my hand. Your father did not just hide something, Claire. He left you a trail. I swallowed hard. To what? Damien stepped closer, close enough that his shadow touched my shoes, but his hand stayed at his sides. To whatever he thought was worth risking both his children for. Outside, a car rolled slowly past my building, too slow for a street that narrow. Damien turned his head toward the window before I heard the engine. One of his men moved to the blinds. I held the key so tightly the teeth bit into my palm. My old life was gone. My new one had teeth. And somewhere between them, my father's ghost was still opening doors. By sunset, Damien had turned my mother's key into a question no one in the house could answer. His men searched databases, storage records, bank boxes, old property deeds, anything that might explain why a dead woman's key had appeared in my apartment after someone had searched it. I I sat in the library with a mug of tea gone cold between my hands, listening to rain begin again against the windows. The sound had followed me for 2 days like a warning. Margaret had brought me a navy dress wrapped in tissue paper and said Mr. Cross needed me ready by 7. I almost refused on principle. Then Damien appeared in the doorway, his tie undone, his face carved from exhaustion and control. "There is a foundation gala tonight," he said. "You need to attend with me." I stared at him. "Someone broke into my apartment this morning. My brother had a stranger follow him on campus. And you want me to put on a dress?" "Yes." "That is insane. That is strategy." He stepped into the room, stopping near the edge of the rug as if he had memorized the distance that kept me from backing away. "The people watching you need to see that you are not hidden. They need to see that you are beside me, under my name, in a room full of cameras and witnesses." I understood then. Not a date. A display. A message written in silk and diamonds. "So I am bait." Damien's expression tightened. "No. You are protected. You keep using prettier words for ugly things. And you keep surviving because of them." I hated that I had no answer. At 7:15, I stood beside him in the back of the SUV wearing a dress that probably cost more than my rent, my hair pinned by Margaret's careful hands, the ring cold and heavy on my finger. Damien looked at me once when I came down the stairs, only once, but the silence after it felt louder than a compliment. "You look appropriate," he said. I laughed under my breath. "Romantic." His eyes flickered. "This is not romance." "No." I remember. "Paper only." Something passed across his face and disappeared before I could name it. The gala was held inside a private museum on the Upper East Side. All white marble, gold light, and people who smiled without showing anything real. Cameras flashed the moment we stepped inside. Damien's hand came to rest at the small of my back, not gripping, not pushing, just there. A signal. A claim. A warning wrapped in manners. "Breathe," he murmured. "I am breathing." "No. You are preparing to run." I turned my head slightly. "Can you always tell?" "With you?" His voice lowered. "Yes." Before I could ask what that meant, a man called my name. "Claire Whitman." I froze. Ethan Blake stood near the champagne table in a dark blue suit, familiar and impossible. He had been a junior attorney at the legal aid office where I used to file paperwork after college, the kind of man who remembered birthdays, brought extra coffee, and made the world feel less sharp. Relief hit me so fast I almost stepped away from Damien. Almost. Ethan smiled, but it faltered when his eyes dropped to my ring. "Claire, I heard about your father. I tried calling. My phone has been complicated," I said, which was the weakest truth I had ever told. Damien's hand stayed at my back. Warm. Still. Ethan looked at him, then back at me. "Can we speak for a minute?" Privately. The air changed. Not dramatically. No one else noticed. But I felt Damien go quiet beside me, the way a room goes quiet before glass breaks. "Anything you need to say to my wife," Damien said, smooth as polished stone, "you can say here." My wife. 2 words. 1,000 invisible doors closing. Ethan swallowed, then leaned closer to me, keeping his voice low. "Your father came to me 3 weeks before he died. He said if anything happened to him, I should find you. He said you would have a key." My fingers curled around nothing, remembering brass teeth biting my palm. Damien's hand shifted slightly against my back. "What key?" he asked. Ethan ignored him. That was his mistake. He reached for my elbow, gentle, familiar, nothing more than concern. "Claire, you are not safe with him." Damien moved before I could breathe. Not violently, not loudly. He simply stepped between us, his smile calm enough to frighten every instinct awake inside me. Around us, the gala kept sparkling. Violins, crystal, soft laughter. But in the small space between 3 people, winter arrived. "Mr. Blake," Damien said, "remove your hand from my wife's arm." Ethan had already let go, but the warning remained in the air like smoke. My cheeks burned. "Damien." His eyes did not leave Ethan. "I asked for one thing tonight, Claire. You asked for many things. I asked you to stay beside me." Ethan looked at me with open concern. "You do not have to do what he says." Damien's smile disappeared. Slowly. Completely. When he spoke again, his voice was low enough that only we could hear it. "Careful. You are confusing her kindness with permission." I turned to him, anger rising through the fear. "You said this was not real." Damien finally looked at me. And there it was. Not the boss. not the strategist. Something rawer, breaking through the perfect suit and the perfect control. Jealousy did not make him loud. It made him honest for half a second. Then why? He whispered. Do I want to tear this entire room apart every time he says your name like he knew you first? My breath caught. Ethan went silent. Damien seemed to realize what he had admitted at the exact moment I did. His face closed again, but too late. The crack was already there. Then Ethan said the one thing that turned the crack into a cliff. Because I did know her first. Damien's hand fell from my back. The absence of it felt colder than the warning had. He leaned closer to Ethan, his voice calm, almost polite. Then you should know better than anyone that she deserves to be protected. Ethan looked past him to me. From what, Claire? Or from who? I looked between them, my ring flashing under the chandelier light, my mother's key hidden upstairs, my father's secrets circling closer. For the first time since signing the contract, I realized I was not trapped between safety and danger. I was trapped between two men who both knew pieces of my life I did not. And Damien, the man who swore our marriage meant nothing, looked at Ethan like losing me had already begun to hurt. Damien did not drag me out of the gala. That would have been easier to hate. He simply turned to the nearest exit, offered his arm like a husband in front of 100 glittering strangers, and waited until I chose whether to take it. I hated that choice. I hated the cameras, the whispers, the weight of Ethan's eyes on my back, and the way my own hand betrayed me by resting lightly on Damien's sleeve. Outside, the cold Manhattan air struck my face like water. The museum steps shone under the streetlights, and the line of black cars along the curb looked like a funeral procession for the woman I had been 2 days ago. Damien walked beside me in silence until we reached the SUV. He opened the door himself. Not the driver. Not one of his men. Him. I climbed in, every nerve buzzing. The door shut, sealing us inside leather, darkness, and the kind of quiet that did not feel empty. It felt armed. For 10 blocks, he said nothing. I watched city lights slide across his face, silver then gold then shadow. His hands rested on his knees, still and controlled, but one knuckle had gone pale where his thumb pressed too hard against it. That was the only proof he was not made of stone. You embarrassed me, I said finally. His eyes stayed on the window. He touched you. He touched my elbow. He did it like he had the right. I turned toward him. And you think you do? The question landed between us, sharp and clean. Damien's gaze moved to mine. In the dim cabin light, his gray eyes looked almost black. Legally, yes. Do not hide behind paperwork. I am not hiding. Yes, you are. Behind contracts. Behind security. Behind that perfect voice you use when you want everyone in the room to remember they are smaller than you. The driver kept his eyes forward. The divider rose with a soft mechanical hum before I even saw Damien press the button. Suddenly, it was just us. No witnesses. No ballroom. No Ethan. Only the sound of tires passing over wet pavement and my heartbeat making bad decisions in my chest. You want to talk about hiding? Damien said quietly. You smiled at him like he was a door out. Maybe he was. The words came out before I could soften them. His face changed so slightly anyone else would have missed it. I did not. I had started learning him against my will. The tiny tightening of his mouth. The pause before he breathed. The way silence became armor when something hit too close. He cannot protect you, Damien said. This is not about protection. Everything is about protection. No, Damien. This is about control. You called me your wife in front of him like a warning label. You looked at me like I had broken a rule you never had the right to make. His voice lowered. You are wearing my ring. Because you put it on my hand to save your own plans. To save your life. Then act like it is my life. The SUV stopped at a red light. Rainwater crawled down the tinted window in crooked lines, turning the traffic signals into bleeding color. Damien looked away first, and for some reason that hurt more than if he had shouted. When we reached the house, I got out before anyone could open my door. My heels clicked too loudly across the marble foyer. Margaret appeared at the end of the hall, took one look at my face, and quietly disappeared again. I went straight to the library because it had become the only room where I could breathe and feel watched at the same time. Damien followed. Of course he did. I turned on him the moment the door closed. You do not get to be jealous. The word hung there, undeniable now. His shoulders went still. I am not jealous. I laughed once, sharp and tired. You looked at Ethan like he stole something from you. He wants something from you. So do you. I want you alive. You want me obedient. That did it. Not loudly. Not dangerously. Just enough. Damien's hand came down on the edge of the desk, and the untouched glass of water beside an old stack of books tipped over, spilling clear across the polished wood. The sound made me flinch before I could stop myself. Everything in him changed. Instantly. The anger drained from his face so fast it left something bare behind. He stepped back. One step. Then another. Hands visible at his sides. Voice low. Claire. I hated the softness in it. Hated it because it was careful. Because it respected the fear before I had even admitted it existed. I did not mean to scare you. My throat tightened. Then stop acting like the whole world is yours to command. He looked at the spilled water spreading across the desk, soaking into the edge of a file. When he spoke, his voice was rougher than I had ever heard it. I can control boardrooms. Judges. Men who think fear makes them kings. I can control every door in this city if I need to. He lifted his eyes to mine, and the room seemed to shrink around the truth in them. But I cannot control what happens to me when you look at him like he knew you before I ruined everything. I could not move. The clock on the mantel ticked once. Twice. Somewhere down the hall, a phone rang and went unanswered. Damien looked almost angry at himself now. As if honesty had slipped from him like blood from a cut he refused to acknowledge. This was supposed to be simple, he said. A contract. A name. A shield. Then keep it simple. My voice was barely above a whisper. Stop acting like my heart is part of the agreement. He looked at my hand, at the ring, then back at me. It is not. Good. But that does not mean he gets to hold it. The air left my lungs. There it was. The line neither of us could step back from. Not a threat. Not a command. A confession wearing the last scraps of pride. I should have walked out. Instead, I stood there in a borrowed dress, in a house that was not mine, facing a man who had married me to protect me and was starting to hate every second he had to pretend protection was all he felt. Then his phone buzzed on the wet desk. He glanced at the screen, and the fragile crack between us sealed shut. What is it? I asked. Damien picked up the phone slowly. His face went cold again, but this time the cold was not for me. They found where the key belongs. My hand went to my throat. Where? He looked toward the rain-dark windows, then back at me. A safe deposit box in your mother's maiden name. Opened 21 years ago. Accessed once last week. By who? Damien's silence answered before his voice did. Ethan Blake. The name Ethan Blake did not echo. It struck once and stayed there, heavy as a locked door. I stared at Damien across the library desk, watching rainlight move over the spilled water, the soaked file, the phone in his hand. No, I said, because denial was the only thing my mouth could still do. Ethan would not have a key to anything connected to my mother. Damien's face gave me nothing. That was how I knew he had already checked twice. He accessed the box using a court authorization and a family liaison form. What? A document claiming your father appointed him as emergency counsel before his death. My stomach turned cold. Can people fake that? Damien's eyes held mine. People can fake anything if the right clerk is tired enough and the right name is signed neatly enough. I reached for the back of a chair. My fingers missed the first time. Ethan, the man who used to bring extra coffee when I worked late. The man who remembered Noah's birthday. The man who had looked at me across the gala floor and said I was not safe with Damien. Maybe he was right. Maybe he was lying. Maybe I had spent my whole life trusting the wrong softness and fearing the wrong sharp edge. Take me there, I said. Damien's answer came too fast. No, that was not a request. It should have been. I lifted my chin even though my throat was shaking. My mother's name is on that box. My father left the key for me. If Ethan opened it, I need to know what he saw. Damien stepped closer, then stopped, remembering the flinch from moments earlier. I hated that he remembered. I hated that it mattered. Claire, whoever opened that box may have led others straight to it. Then I should be there before they clean out what is left. His jaw tightened. You are arguing with me because you are scared. I am arguing with you because you are not my owner. Silence snapped tight between us. Then, to my surprise, Damien looked away first. Get a coat, he said. 30 minutes later, the city blurred past the SUV windows, all wet pavement and neon bleeding into puddles. The safe deposit facility sat beneath a private bank on Madison Avenue, the kind of place without signs, only brass numbers by the door and a guard who stood straighter when Damien walked in. They took us downstairs in a private elevator that smelled like lemon polish and old money. My mother's key lay in my palm, warmer now from how tightly I held it. The vault attendant, a pale man named Mr. Roswell, kept glancing between Damien and me with the nervous politeness of someone who knew too much about powerful clients and wanted to know nothing else. Box 714, he said, leading us into a small viewing room. It was accessed last Tuesday at 3:42 in the afternoon. By Ethan Blake, Damien said. Mr. Roswell swallowed. By an authorized representative, yes. Was anything removed? I asked. He hesitated. Damien did not speak. He only looked at him. Mr. Roswell quickly unlocked the outer door and stepped back. The contents are private. I will be outside. When the door closed, the room felt airless. Damien stood behind me, close enough that I could feel his presence, far enough that I could not accuse him of crowding me. I slid my mother's key into the lock. It turned with a soft metallic click that sounded impossibly final. Inside the box was not treasure. No cash. No jewelry except a thin gold chain wrapped around an old photograph. My mother stood on a beach somewhere, younger than I remembered, wind lifting her blonde hair. Beside her stood my father, smiling in a way I had almost forgotten he could. Between them was another man, half turned away from the camera, his face blurred by sunlight, but his hand rested on the shoulder of a little boy with gray eyes. I looked back at Damien. All the color had left his face. Who was that? I whispered. He reached past me, not touching me, and lifted the photo like it might burn him. His voice changed when he answered. Lower. Older. My brother. The room tilted. Your brother knew my parents? Damien did not answer immediately. He turned the photo over. On the back, in my mother's handwriting, were 6 words. Forgive us. We chose the child. My mouth went dry. Beneath the photograph was a slim envelope addressed to me. Claire, when you are old enough to hate us, please read everything first. My hands shook so hard Damien took the envelope before I dropped it. He did not open it. He placed it gently back in my hands. That gentleness almost broke me. Inside was a letter. My mother's voice came alive in blue ink. She wrote about a ledger my father had kept, a record of payments and names tied to men who used respectable businesses to hide ugly things. She wrote that Damien's younger brother, Julian Cross, had tried to help them expose it years ago. She wrote that Julian died because my father panicked and gave information to the wrong person. I stopped reading. The words blurred. My father got your brother killed. Damien stood very still. That is why you married me, I whispered. Revenge. His eyes snapped to mine. No, do not lie to me. I am not. Then what was I, Damien? Punishment with a wedding ring. The hurt in my own voice embarrassed me. I wanted to take it back, but it was already between us, breathing. Damien looked at the letter, then at the photograph of his brother. When he spoke, the control was there, but cracked down the center. For years, I thought your father betrayed Julian for money. Then 3 weeks ago, he contacted me. Said he had proof that Julian was set up by someone inside my family. Said he feared for you and Noah. I did not believe him until he died. My heartbeat slowed into something heavy and painful. You knew he was in danger? I knew too late. He reached into the box and pulled out the last item. A flash drive taped beneath the velvet lining. Written on it in black marker were 2 initials. E.B. Ethan Blake. I could not breathe. He was here for that. Damien nodded once. Or for whatever is on it. A soft knock came at the viewing room door. Mr. Roswell's voice trembled from the other side. Mr. Cross, there is a gentleman upstairs asking for Mrs. Cross. My blood went cold. Damien slipped the flash drive into his inner pocket, his eyes never leaving the door. Name. The answer came through the wood like a ghost choosing a body. Ethan Blake. Damien turned to me, and for the first time since I had met him, he did not look jealous. He looked afraid of what I was about to learn. Claire, he said quietly, whatever he tells you next, remember this. He did not come here to save you. He came because he knows you found the truth. The elevator ride upstairs felt longer than 70 floors. Damien stood beside me with the flash drive hidden inside his jacket and my mother's letter folded in my shaking hand. No one spoke. Even the elevator seemed to hold its breath, rising through steel and marble toward the man who had once felt like safety. When the doors opened, Ethan Blake was waiting in the private lobby of the bank, his blue suit damp at the shoulders, his hair darkened by rain. his face arranged into concern so familiar it almost fooled me. Almost. Claire, he said, stepping forward. Two of Damien's men shifted at once. Ethan stopped, lifting both hands slightly. I am not here to cause trouble. Damien's voice was quiet. Then you are overdressed for a lie. Ethan ignored him and looked only at me. You need to come with me. Right now. My fingers tightened around the letter. Why did you access my mother's safe deposit box? For the first time, the concern cracked. Not much. Just enough. Because your father asked me to protect what was inside. From Damien? Ethan's eyes moved to him. From men like him. Damien did not react. That made Ethan look nervous. I noticed it then, the difference between power and performance. Damien could stand still and make a room change shape. Ethan needed words. You knew about Julian Cross, I said. Ethan's mouth tightened. I knew enough. You knew my father blamed himself. Your father blamed himself for everything. It made him easy to guide. The sentence slipped out too smoothly, and the room went colder. Damien turned his head slightly. Guide. Ethan looked back at me too fast. That is not what I meant. But I had heard it. I had heard the hidden door open. You forged the authorization, I whispered. You wanted the flash drive. His expression hardened. The mask did not fall. It aged. Claire, you have no idea what is on that drive. Then tell me. Names. Accounts. Police contacts. Judges. Business owners. People who will destroy your life if that information gets out. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. I was trying to keep you from becoming a target. Damien's laugh was barely a sound. By following her brother and breaking into her apartment, my stomach dropped. Ethan looked at me, and his silence was worse than denial. Noah was never in danger from me, he said. I only needed your attention. My breath came shallow. You scared my brother to get me to listen? I did what I had to do. The words should have belonged to Damien. That they came from Ethan made something inside me settle, painfully and permanently. I turned toward the glass doors of the bank. Outside, a black sedan sat at the curb, engine running, wipers moving back and forth through the rain. A man in the passenger seat looked away too quickly when I noticed him. Damien saw my face change and followed my gaze. His hand came near my back, but did not touch. Claire, he said, step behind me. Ethan moved at the same time. No, she comes with me. I looked between them. One man had married me without love and told me the truth in pieces. The other had offered softness and hidden a blade inside concern. My voice shook, but it held. I am not going anywhere with you. Ethan's eyes sharpened. You think he will choose you when this is over? You are evidence to him. Leverage. A pretty signature on a dangerous document. Damien went still beside me. I expected anger. I expected that cold, possessive voice. Instead, he looked at me, only me. You do not have to stand beside me because of the contract, he said. Stand where you feel safest. The lobby noise faded. Rain against glass. My pulse in my ears. Ethan breathing too fast. Damien giving me the one thing I had been begging for since the night we met. A choice. I stepped toward Damien. Not behind him. Beside him. Ethan's face changed completely. The friendly mask vanished, leaving panic underneath. You are making a mistake. No, I said. I am finally making one myself. The front doors opened before anyone reached them. Wind pushed rain across the marble floor. The men from the sedan entered with calm faces and empty hands, but the whole lobby recoiled as if danger had become visible. Damien's men moved around us, controlled and silent. No shouting, no chaos, just a wall forming where seconds earlier there had been open space. Damien leaned close enough for only me to hear. When I say walk, you walk with Margaret's driver through the side exit. Do not run. Do not look back. Fear rose into my throat. What about you? His eyes stayed on the men ahead. I told you, Claire. My name closes doors. Ethan suddenly grabbed for the flash drive inside Damien's jacket, but Damien caught his wrist and held it still without force, without drama, just absolute control. You always reach for what is not yours, Damien said. Ethan's face twisted with desperation. You do not understand what they promised me. I understand exactly what you sold. Security flooded the lobby from both sides, bank guards and Damien's men moving together with practiced restraint. The men from the sedan stopped. No one needed to be hurt for the room to understand who had already lost. Damien released Ethan and stepped back, but Ethan looked past him at me. Claire, please. It was the please that almost undid me, because it sounded like the old Ethan, the one who brought coffee, the one who made ordinary days easier. Then I remembered Noah's frightened voice. My apartment door standing open. My mother's box accessed in secret. I held Damien's sleeve, just enough to steady myself. Goodbye, Ethan. Damien looked down at my hand on his arm, and something in his face broke quietly. Not control, not pride, something lonelier. We left through the side exit into the rain, guided by men who kept their distance. The city smelled like wet stone and gasoline. My dress clung cold around my knees. Damien opened the SUV door, but this time he did not tell me to get in. He waited. I climbed inside by choice. When he sat beside me, his hands were steady, but his voice was not. I thought he would take you from me. I looked at the ring on my finger, then at the man who had finally admitted fear without turning it into a command. He almost did, I said. Damien closed his eyes for 1 second, as if those 3 words had cost him more than any war. When he opened them, the city lights reflected in gray. Not again, he whispered. And for the first time, it did not sound like possession. It sounded like a prayer. By the time we returned to the house, dawn had begun to pale the edges of Manhattan, turning the windows silver and the marble floors blue. I had not slept in almost 2 days, but exhaustion no longer felt like something happening to my body. It felt like weather inside my bones. Margaret met us in the foyer with a blanket over one arm, and worry she tried to hide behind perfect posture. Damien thanked her quietly, and the softness in his voice startled me. Not because it was new, because I was finally listening for it. The flash drive went straight into the hands of a forensic accountant Damien trusted, a woman named Lena Park who arrived before sunrise in sneakers, a gray hoodie, and the calm expression of someone who had seen powerful men panic over spreadsheets. By 8 in the morning, we had the truth. Ethan had not been working alone. The drive held records connecting shell companies, courthouse favors, private donations, and the men who had used my father's fear like a leash. It also held proof that Julian Cross had not been betrayed by my father for money. He had been betrayed by someone inside Damien's own circle, someone who wanted both families blaming each other forever. My father had spent years gathering enough evidence to fix the worst mistake of his life. He died before he could finish. My mother had hidden the key because she knew the truth would outlive both of them if it had a place to wait. Damien stood in the library while Lena explained it, one hand on the back of a chair, his face still as stone. When she said Julian's name, his fingers tightened once. Only once. But I saw the grief move through him, silent and old and disciplined into a shape that could stand upright. By noon, the files had been delivered to people even Damien could not control, which meant people no one else could threaten. Federal investigators, independent auditors, a judge with a reputation clean enough to make enemies nervous. No dramatic speeches, no revenge, just truth moving through the proper doors at last. That should have been the ending. It was not. At 3:20 in the afternoon, I found Damien alone in the courtyard, standing beneath a bare winter tree while rainwater dripped from the branches onto his black coat. He looked too tired to be feared, too human to be untouchable. For a minute, I watched him from the doorway, remembering the first night in the law office, the contract sliding toward me, his voice telling me to sign or die before sunrise. I had thought power was the loudest thing about him. I had been wrong. Loneliness was. He turned before I said his name. Of course he did. Noah is safe, he said. Campus police took his statement. My people are leaving Boston tonight unless you ask them to stay. My people, I repeated, stepping into the courtyard. You still say it like you own the weather. A faint breath that might have been a laugh left him. Bad habit. You have many. I know. That answer stopped me. No defense. No sharp line. No perfectly controlled explanation. Just 2 words, simple enough to hurt. I looked down at the ring on my finger. The diamond caught the gray afternoon light without warmth. What happens now? I asked. Damien's gaze dropped to the ring too. The contract can be dissolved. Harlan will prepare the papers. Your father's debt is gone. Your name is clear. You and Noah will have protection as long as you want it, from a distance you choose. A distance I choose. The words settled between us like something fragile. And you? His eyes lifted to mine. I go back to being what I was before you. I shook my head. No, you do not. Something moved across his face. Hope, maybe. Fear, definitely. Claire, do not say my name like a warning. I was going to say it like an apology. The courtyard went quiet except for water ticking against stone. I slipped the ring off my finger. Damien watched the movement, and every guarded part of him seemed to go still. I placed it in his open palm. His hand closed around it slowly, as if accepting a sentence. I understand, he said. The sadness in his voice nearly broke me. No, you do not. He looked at me then. You gave me this ring like an order. Like protection. Like paperwork could decide what my life became. My voice shook, but I did not look away. If you want me to wear it now, you have to ask me like a man, not command me like a king. Damien stared at me. For once, the city did not seem to belong to him. The house did not. The name did not. Nothing did. Then Damien Cross, the man people cross streets to avoid, lowered himself to one knee on the wet stone. Not smoothly. Not theatrically. Carefully, like humility was a language his body was still learning. He opened his hand. The ring lay against his palm, no longer a shackle, no longer a shield. Just a choice. Claire Elise Whitman, he said, and his voice broke on the middle of my name. I do not deserve what I am asking. I know that. But if you stay, I will spend every day proving that my love does not need to own you to protect you. My throat closed. The girl from Queens, the girl with cheap coffee on her coat and grief folded into laundry, would never have believed this moment could belong to her. I stepped closer and took the ring. I did not put it on. Not yet. I held it between us and smiled through tears I finally let fall. Then we start with no contracts. Damien nodded. No contracts. No cages. No cages. No deciding for me. His mouth softened, almost a smile. That one may take practice. Then practice. He rose slowly, and when his hand reached for mine, he stopped halfway, waiting. I closed the distance myself. His fingers wrapped around mine with the gentleness of someone holding something he had once mistaken for possession and finally understood as trust. Our marriage had begun with ink, fear, and a lie told under storm lights. But it did not become real when he claimed me in a ballroom or protected me from men with polished smiles. It became real in a quiet courtyard, when the most powerful man I had ever known gave me back my choice and asked if I would share it with him.